So today let's talk about Mars and Pisces through each of the houses and what this placement means about your personality when you have it in your birth chart. So first of all, Mars represents action and impulsiveness, and Pisces is all about fantasies, dreams, potential, and spirituality. So those that have Mars and Pisces are natural dreamers, procrastinators, and just very passionate people, though, despite the occasional tendency towards procrastination, because Pisces is all about fantasy and is also about relaxation and rest and escapism. So although Mars and Pisces people will have like big dreams or like a great visionary capacity, the fact that they will stay in their imagination a long time will lead to delays sometimes. So also Pisces is the sign that is behind Aries. It's like before Aries. And so it's the stage before we take action. So when you have Mars in this stage or this sign, that's why it shows you might never jump to a start. On the other hand, Mars represents the physical body and it represents physical activity. And this placement in Pisces shows great athletes in some cases. And it can show actually some of the greatest athletes because their body and movements are intuitive. It's like a dance or a flow, and there's muscle memory to how they do things. And so if there is athletic talent in the chart or in the person, it is likely a capability that simply can't be taught, and it's like something that is very unique or advanced about their athletic performance. Some of the greatest athletes have Neptune conjunct Mars or Mars in Pisces. For example, LeBron James, arguably one of the greatest basketball players, has Mars in Pisces. Stephen Curry, another great player in basketball, has Neptune conjunct to Mars. And if you look at his performance and how he plays and how he shoots the ball, it's at such a high level that it cannot really be taught. It's all muscle memory. It's all seemingly so intuitive and in flow. But those are just a few examples. And Pisces represents films, and it represents idols and celebrities in some cases. So this is why having Mars in Pisces shows that you can be on film playing sports. Like you can be somebody that is a professional athlete, or you can perform athletically on camera and it looks appealing. And that's just going to be the case for certain people that have this placement. But overall, the movement of the body for these individuals, which is represented by Mars, it is a deeply spiritual act. So physical activity is important for their spiritual and mental well-being, because Pisces is all about the psyche. It rules the 12th house. The next thing about Mars is just about how we pursue things and people that we are attracted to. It's the masculine side of attraction. And so in Pisces, Mars can be kind of like the hopeless romantic, chasing the object of their passions with blown out of proportion idealism or fantasies. On the other hand, Mars in Pisces shows people that are impulsively creative or artistic. Sometimes they do things too big, though, wanting to express or achieve some big picture motive. And their dreams and ambitions will often attract criticism, especially because of their idealistic approach. Mars will cause one to fantasize a lot here. And in Pisces here, once they act, the action can sometimes be out of proportion. Pisces was traditionally ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is about optimism and excess and faith and abundance. So there's a larger than life aspect to these people's goals when they have Mars in this traditionally Jupiter ruled sign. Finally there can be delusions around their capabilities. And I use that word lightly because delusion and self-confidence are kind of intertwined. So you have to be delusional to have confidence and to perform. But from the perspective of some other people, their actions or their sense of confidence in their capabilities may appear delusional, and that's because Pisces is larger than life. Pisces is about potential. It's about what has not yet been accomplished. So there's obviously going to be this kind of an effect. Now, other times, Mars in Pisces will indicate timidity or insecurity around one's masculinity or capabilities. So it can be either on one extreme or the other. Either they'll be delusional about their capabilities, or they'll have a lot of doubts about their capabilities due to fear of failing or appearing delusional. So this effect will cause reluctance or procrastination because Mars is all about taking action, but Pisces can be about insecurity, sensitivity, or timidity in some of the cases. So that is another thing that will cause them to be reluctant. And instead of taking action, they might fantasize a lot. However, when Mars is expressive and persistent in the chart, though there will be the fair share of disappointments when it comes to pursuing the objects of their desires or pursuing a woman, Mars and Pisces really sweeps the right woman off her feet. It's almost like Prince Charming energy because they want to give the object of their desires a Disney movie like treatment and love. So now let's talk about a few celebrities that have this placement before talking about the houses. Marilyn Monroe, Billie Eilish, Heath Ledger, Paris Hilton, Vincent van Gogh, Elizabeth Taylor, Tom Hiddleston, David Beckham, which is another example of a great athlete, Tom Hanks, Che Guevara, LeBron James, Adam Levine, Tina Turner, and Bob Dylan, Bono, Elton John, Enrique Iglesias, Denzel Washington, Ricky Martin, Mitt Romney, Jeffrey Epstein, and an honorable mention to Andrew Tate, because not only does he have Mars in Pisces, but his Mars in Pisces is conjunct to Jupiter. So he's a good example of Mars and Pisces energy because he has an excess of this type of energy. And so this goes back to that theme of sometimes having larger than life motives and also attracting criticism. And especially because they have an over idealistic approach or belief in their capabilities that can sometimes take the form of delusions in the eyes of others. And so, that's a good example in modern times, or like in the times around this video being recorded, of somebody with displacement, because Jupiter will show where we have an abundance of a certain type of energy. So he has an abundance of Mars and Pisces energy. With that being said, let's talk about each of the houses and what this placement means through each of the houses, starting with the first house. Mars in the first house bestows physical strength. However, in Pisces, your actions and your anger and your impulses will occasionally be blown out of proportion, and they are a characteristic aspect of yourself and of your personality. The first house rules personality and self. Second house, Mars and Pisces, makes one creatively and financially ambitious. The delusional aspects of Mars and Pisces become more grounded here. So there is actually less of a expression of delusion. They're actually pretty down to earth or realistic people. And it's because they have a good sense of quality and perspective. The second house is a earth house. It's very grounded and it's like constructive and practical. So overall, this placement manifests as people that are actually very inventive because they still carry the positive aspects of Mars and Pisces, but it's just more grounded. So they will still be dreamers, but they will actually be constructive about their dreams, and this will lead them to very resourceful or inventive outcomes. Next, it takes us to the third house placement of Mars and Pisces. This can be one of the most scattered placements for Mars. For Mars is objective. So like these people's goals and actions can be scattered when Mars is in this placement. And the image I get is like of an entrepreneur or creative that has way too many visions, but sometimes they have just difficulty following through on those visions to the end, because they just might be inspired in many like different directions, or at many like in a multitude of different ways, because the third house is ruled by Mercury, and it's a mutable house, and mutable houses are all about change and circumstances. So like their inspirations are constantly changing, and they're also getting new inspirations all the time. So and then Mars is a planet of action, so it shows that this energy filters through their actions. So their actions end up being scattered, and they might have great ideas and be great visionaries, but the only thing that will hold them back is if they don't follow through on each idea towards the end. And ultimately, if they can channel their inspiration through the form of writing or communication, they will actually be very productive people, because they will have an easier time communicating things than actually committing towards an idea physically and following it through for years and years, all the way till it's done. They will have a better time just describing things and teaching or inspiring. So the next placement is Mars in Pisces in the fourth house. The fourth house is about emotions, and Mars is about anger and aggression. So in the family, there can be a history of chaos and outbursts of anger. Also, there can be a history of misunderstandings, confusion, and conflict, because Mars will bring conflict to the upbringing or to the family dynamic when it's in a person's fourth house. And they themselves, whether or not their family has a history of anger, they can deal with emotions of anger or frustration that become a characteristic part of certain parts of their life or certain moments. And overall, Mars in the fourth house can be sensitive and reactive, especially when it's in Pisces. Pisces is about sensitivity and taking things personally. So generally speaking, Mars in the fourth house in Pisces will have a tendency to take things personally and as a threat to their ego that they need to learn how to cope with or become self-aware of. And once they become self-aware of, these become very powerful and self-controlled individuals. And Mars in the fourth house in Pisces expresses itself more as like a very creative placement. Somebody that has like a lot of passion to accomplish something on an emotional level that will reflect creatively. So the next house and the next placement is Mars and Pisces in the fifth house. This placement shows creatively passionate people because the fifth house is about self-expression and it's about being seen, and it's also about taking credit for things that are seen. So it's like when you put a work of art out into the world for it to gain views or for it to gain likes, and so it can validate your ego. But also it is about being seen not just publicly, but on a stage, like being the center of attention. So as we were saying, Mars and Pisces can show very talented athletes, like athletic stars. For example, LeBron James has Mars in Pisces, and David Beckham has Mars and Pisces. These are two different types of sports that they play, but they are top tiers performers. And having Mars in the fifth house here is one of those placements that can show athletic gift because it will show competitive performers. The fifth house is about performance, and Mars is about athletics and competition, and Pisces is about having the gift of flow or muscle memory and intuitive movement. And it's also about being on camera. The 12th house and the sign Pisces rules film. So these people perform well at sports on camera. So they can be stars or they can stand out amongst a group of other athletes or performer. And it can be for any sport. But anything where there is this need to be seen and to perform. And it could also be about dance too. The next placement is Mars and Pisces in the sixth house. Mars can sometimes struggle with unclear objectives when it's here in this placement, or inefficiency. Sometimes these individuals can be busy, like they can occupy themselves, but in very inefficient manners, because again, Pisces is idealistic, it's more scattered and disorganized, and it's in the opposing house than what it rules, which is the sixth house. The sixth house is about staying productive. So Mars just kind of struggles to have clear objectives. Next, let's talk about Mars in Pisces in the seventh house. Mars is in fall when it's in the seventh house, or debilitated. I forget which is the correct term. But in combination with Pisces, this is one of the placements of Mars that can be passive or docile. On the other hand, it can show in some people a tendency to be overreactive and sensitive, because Mars is sensitive in Pisces. And in the seventh house, this is about how we react or relate to others. So others can easily trigger you if you have Mars in the seventh house. And it's not just this placement of Mars, it's just all the different signs that have Mars in the seventh house for the most part. The positive of Mars in the seventh house is it shows a master strategist, because they always plan their actions in order to get the best results or consequences. The seventh house is about consequences, it's about cause and effect. So having the planet of actions here shows that every action for you is calculated or mental. And the only thing though is that those that have Mars in the seventh house have a tendency to procrastinate, or to only be good at strategizing, but they might never initiate. So having Mars and Pisces here will sometimes show always fantasizing about the plan, but never necessarily acting. And it's not that they can't act, it's just they just need that encouragement to start on their actual plans. And their strategies are actually the best out of all the signs, especially because these are big dreamers that have this placement. Mars in Pisces is very ambitious and has big goals. Next, this leads us to the the eighth house placement of Mars in Pisces. This placement of Pisces Mars is highly driven and motivated. And the most positive aspect of this placement is that these people are relentless towards their objectives and towards victory. And usually they have very large ambitions, or like they have this tendency to fantasize and to dream big. So these are master manifestors as well, because they will be relentless towards their dreams. Both the eighth house and the sign Pisces have the trait of being secretive. So having Mars in this placement can show somebody that is secretive about their actions, their dreams, or their delusions. And usually they'll just keep their goals to themselves until they actually accomplish the results. So these are people that won't talk about their plans to others. They would rather enact them first and have results and show others the results. So it's a great and powerful placement for manifestation, because that's one of the key proponents of manifestation, is to keep your intentions secret and to keep your intentions protected. So the next placement is Mars in Pisces in the ninth house. Those that have this placement are very inspired, and they just get very inspired, and they get bursts of passion and motivation, especially when they get some sort of knowledge. Pisces is also about creativity, and the ninth house is about knowledge. So this can show people that have a passion for creative fields of knowledge or of education. And I guess they're motivated to learn as well. And usually they're motivated towards creative topics or the art. And generally speaking, they just get a lot of inspiration from knowledge as well. And knowledge is how they enable themselves to act. So when they want to accomplish something, they first seek the knowledge of how to do it. But sometimes there could be this tendency to procrastinate and to like only seek knowledge, like only consume information, and do that as the action, which obviously you actually have to act on something. You actually have to act yourself in order to succeed and to gain results. You can't just read or learn or consume information about stuff. So anyway, next, this leads us to Mars in Pisces in the 10th house. These people are enterprising and ambitious individuals. They will persistently go towards a dream, and that kind of becomes their career or their life path in a way, because the 10th house is about our reputation, our legacy, our success, and how we are known. And Mars here is showing that it is having to do with some sort of dream that they have, or a lofty goal that they have. They can also be known for something physical, athletic, or creative that they do, because the 10th house represents how we are known, and Pisces is creative, and Mars is something physical. So they can be known for something athletic, or they can be known for a career that they do in the art, or something artistic or creative in general. Next, this takes us to the 11th house. So those that have Mars in Pisces in the 11th house are creative and intelligent individuals. They have an unusual or out-of-the-box approach to things. The 11th house is about technology, so these are techie people, and they can be good with technology or the internet, because the 11th house is also about the internet. And that's pretty much a good summary of this placement. The 11th house placement of Mars can also show people that are rebellious, but overall, they just kind of do things in their own way, because the 11th house is about being unique or forward thinking. The 11th house is a fixed house, and fixed house have structure, so they have a structured approach to their goals. And the structure comes from their intelligence. So it's like these are enterprising people, kind of like a Mars and Pisces in the 10th house. And so they will have these big dreams that come from the Pisces placement, but they have like the intelligence in order to like rationally break it into a plan, or like rationally kind of explain their dream, or like put it onto paper in some way, or kind of do something on the computer or using technology that will express this dream. And so also these people can be good with creative technologies or softwares. So things such as Photoshop, things such as musical softwares on the computer, like anything that's creative and it requires technical knowledge. Last but not least, this takes us to Mars and Pisces in the 12th house. This placement of Mars can show procrastination energy because there is double 12th house connotations here. Pisces rules the 12th house and Mars is also in the 12th house. So overall, this is very like disorganized energy because the 12th house is about chaos and oneness. It's also about disorder. So in general, those that have Mars and Pisces in the 12th house are most productive in creative and indefinite outlets. So what do I mean by indefinite? I just mean in something that's like not a fixed way of doing things. Like they're best and most productive in a way where the process is subjective. So if they're doing things where there's an element of imagination and spontaneity and where the outcome is always different. So overall, these are highly creative people and their passions or their impulsiveness is best expressed through creative forms and through forms where there is not such a strict order or like schedule or like need for structure in a very specific manner, because their inspirations will come and go or they will be very circumstantial. So if they can channel their Mars energy through creative outlets, that's how they'll actually feel like they're the most productive. But outside of that, in like day-to-day life, they might label themselves or feel themselves as being procrastinators, lazy, or struggling with order and with productivity. But it's because they're not channeling the Mars energy in the right place. It's like trying to fit a square peg into a circular hole, is just one of those types of situations. So that is Mars and Pisces through each of the houses. Peace.